Want to talk to some of the other people. That sort of maybe takes us to Tine Laux, who had talked about some of the possible solutions with this program. I know a lot of the conversation has focused on the fact that it is a production where most of the main roles are portrayed by women. But Tine, you were saying you didn't think that necessarily this is a show whose significance is limited to women.
Definitely. It's based on the breakdown of the American family and a lot of facets of our society. And we're just focusing in on part of the visible issue. It's really, I think, from working in social services for 20 years, I see a trend for us to be dealing with self-defeated people. All people, male, female, children, every race, even businesses, when you start thinking organizationally. And with that, there's a real lack of self-esteem and a real feeling of no empowerment. And when you feel that way, you tend to overpower others. And they're usually whoever you think is weakest at the moment. So women do become victims, children do become victims, but the males are just as much a victim, and the businesses are a victim. And this show talks about not band-aiding the problem, or do we band-aid the problem? And I think we have been band-aiding the problem because we haven't been empowering our politicians. Our politicians feel a big pressure from us to put a band-aid on so that they can have a healed scar by the time their term is up so that they'll be reelected. And this is not a time for a simple solution. We've waited too long to do a lot of preventative things that would take 18 years to be able to prove their value, etc., and we're too much stuck on the quick fix. I think besides empowering ourselves, as our main character does in the play, we also need to, as citizens, empower our legislators. It's okay if we don't see something in 4 years. Let's just measure progress, you know.
Do you see that because the play does not have a simple solution, doesn't propose a simple solution, do you see one of the dilemmas then is our own lack of patience, that we want to see this problem solved tomorrow, and we'll follow a solution even though it's not going to solve the problem, but we follow the promise instead of saying, you know, this is a long-term problem. It's going to take us 30, 40 years for this thing to iron itself out of the system.
Right. That's part of it. I think another part is that we don't realize, when you talk about, we don't realize how guilty we feel when you're around a handicapper or someone who's less fortunate than you, that there's issues of guilt that come in that get in the way as well. We either get avoidance, because that's easier, or we get intolerance, because that's different. When we can get around some of that, I think a lot of mistakes are being made in social services by, say, you or I coming in trying to fix what's going on with a pregnant teen. Let's decide what's best for her. Pregnant teens know what they need. Homeless people know what they need in order to change things. You know, abused women know what needs to be different. We need to communicate with those people and get them as part of the solution, the major part.
Susan Fostey, you didn't have a chance last week to discuss your role a lot. Do you see some of what Tine is talking about in your character?
Yes, I definitely do, and maybe that's why it wasn't until this week that we talk about Esther. I think what Esther does, Esther is known to be schizophrenic before she enters the set. And she's labeled, she is not given the care she needs, and she's treated like schizophrenic. So that the social worker, the night social worker, is always leading her to a chair, taking her a cigarette, and it was a very unsatisfying experience, not to be with the cast, but to be Esther was to feel labeled before there was an opportunity to prove myself, and the character does then end up, indeed, she has a real lawyer, and she is going to leave there as soon as the money gets transferred. But there was this labeling, I think, that brings up what Tine is saying about the system, and I have done social work in the past in the Detroit area, and for me it was certainly the same experience as Tine is saying, that I think in some ways what the playwright has done is exhibit just how poor, or what the state of the art of caring for others is to tell them what they need rather than to enable them.
Do you see that, though, beyond our institutional dysfunction? Do you see that in each of us? You know, as parents, spouses, citizens, co-workers, we don't handle each other all that well sometimes.
No, that's very true. I'm also a transactional analyst without a practice, as I chose to travel with my husband around the globe instead. But in our training, we saw that, and we learned how deeply that's true, that we are not treating each other with the respect and okayness that makes our society work. And I think a lot of things have contributed to that, not just people themselves. And the automobiles took us off the streets. The downtowns are empty. And yet this is a wonderful, vital city that this transplanted Detroiter never thought I would ever say. Because actually, truthfully, I never heard a good thing about Flint. Never once. And I came up here and was blown away with what you've heard last week about the culture, the art, and most especially the people. And I think that this play is like partly a beginning of people getting together, sharing versus having their own little cliques, things like that. I'm really happy to live in Flint, and I do like it, and I don't have to spend my life in the car getting around Detroit anymore, and I love my hometown too.
Uh-huh.